You broke it.
I broke it.
Mike the Bee, the music. Hello, my little flowers. We are at the Kennedy Space Center today for our very first visit. It also happens to be our 6-year anniversary, so we decided to come and see what the real space people did, like during their space travels, maybe what's in store. We've never been here before, so this will be a first for both of us. So we're gonna see what we can see, do what we can do. With all that being said, let's go. So first thing when we get here, we're getting our tickets, and it's a kind of a walk-up self-serve kiosk. We don't see like an actual kiosk where you can see a person. There's an information booth, so just know that if you haven't gotten your tickets before coming to the complex. So once we got our ticket situation figured out, we were ready to go. Now, just so that you know, the only discount they give at the actual complex is a military discount. So if you get a discount through other agencies, be sure to purchase your tickets before you get to the complex to utilize that. Otherwise, you just go on through the front gate and enjoy your day. Now, there are paper maps, but there's also an app for the complex. So if you don't want to carry around a paper map, or if apps are just more your speed, you can download the app from your app store. It's got all kinds of information. It's got the map, it's got a list view, it's got show times, it's got places you can eat, shops, etc. So just so that you know that before you enjoy your day. We did get a late start to our day, but we wanted to make sure that we took the Kennedy Space Center bus tour to the Apollo and Saturn V Center. The tour is included with your daily admission, and they are on a continuous loop with the buses leaving starting as early as 9:30 a.m., with the last one leaving around 2:30 p.m., at least on the day of our visit. That's why it's always good to make sure to check any of the scheduled times for your visit so you don't miss anything that you really want to see. Before boarding the shuttle, you do stop and get your picture taken, and then you're given a link you can go to later on to look at your photos and decide if you want to purchase any of them. The bus ride was roughly a 10 to 15 minute ride to the other center, but there were some points of interest along the way because you are traveling across the actual working center.
This rocket that you'll see standing tall in front of KSU's badging station is the Mercury Redstone rocket. It represents NASA's earliest efforts to send humans into space.
We also drove by the Vehicle Assemble Building, also known as the Vertical Assembly Building, or VAB, which is a large building at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, designed to assemble large pre-manufactured space vehicle components, such as the massive Saturn V, the Space Shuttle, and the Space Launch System, and stack them vertically onto one of 3 mobile launch platforms used by NASA. We did get a glimpse of the Mobile Launcher Platform, or the MLP, the structure used to support the multi-stage space vehicle, which is then transported by a crawler transport to the launch pad. Each MLP weighs 8.23 million pounds unloaded and roughly 11 million pounds with an unfueled shuttle aboard. It measures 160 by 135 feet and is 25 feet high. They were carried by one of 2 crawler transporters, which measured 131 by 114 feet and 20 feet high. Each crawler weighs about 6 million pounds unloaded, has a maximum speed of about 1 mile per hour loaded, and has a leveling system designed to keep the launch vehicle vertical while negotiating the 5% grade leading to the top of the launch pad. 2 2,750 horsepower diesel engines power each crawler. As we approached the Apollo and Saturn V Center, we got a view of the VIP viewing area for the rocket launches.
With great pride that we present the story of NASA's Apollo program, the greatest adventure mankind has ever undertaken.
When I was a kid, I used to dream about flying through space. Every week on TV, I'd watch my heroes as they jumped into their rocket ships and took to the stars. And I wanted to be like them. They had courage, imagination, and no problem ever stood in their way for long. And at the end, when we actually did send men into space, it turned out that those were exactly the qualities it took. I'm John Hudson. This is Pad 39 of the Kennedy Space Center. I was a launch controller here when from this very spot, man took off to fly to the moon. It was a journey that began 12 years before that rocket ever left the ground. And it started on the other side of the world. Back then, we were one of two superpowers that always seemed to be on the edge of a terrible war. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched the first ever man-made satellite into Earth orbit. They called it Sputnik, which means traveling companion. And in a world where peace held a delicate balance, it seemed to create a dangerous advantage. Every ham radio operator in America could hear it beeping. People were afraid. Were the Soviets looking down on us? Watching us? If they could make a satellite pass over our cities, could they do the same with a bomb? Our own space program kicked into high gear, and less than 2 months later, we were ready to launch our own satellite. It was being called the space race, and we were running a distant second. In 1961, we fell even further behind. Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first man into space, circling the world in just 89 minutes. We had our own astronauts, and they were eager and ready to take the big ride. But our manned space program couldn't seem to get off the ground. We stuck with it, and on May 5th, 1961, things finally started going right. Astronaut Alan Shepard took his ship Freedom 7 6.5 miles into space. America had its first space hero. Just a few days later, our space program received a new challenge. But this one did not come from the Soviet Union. It came from our young president. In one inspiring moment, he changed the mission from one based in fear of the present to one of hope for the future.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Bryce play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
We hadn't been more than 16 minutes into space, and now we were going to the moon. We would have to design a rocket the size of a 36-story office building, put it together with the precision of a microscope, and accelerate it to the speed of a bullet. Then we would have to guide it to a moving target 250,000 miles away. Many people thought it was an impossible dream, but 400,000 of us set about making that dream a reality. It would be the longest, most hazardous voyage that any man had dared to attempt. But step by step, mission by mission, we orbited the Earth, perfecting the skills and technologies we would need on this incredible journey. Our astronauts practiced maneuvering, docking, and the 1,000 other tasks that would comprise the moon mission. We created new alloys, lighter and stronger than anything seen before. We designed communication systems that would be reliable over the vast distances. And behind it all, we tried to perfect a rocket that would be powerful enough to punch out of Earth orbit and take us to the moon. One day, however, the dream of flying to the moon almost slipped away. It was January 27th, 1967. Astronauts Virgil Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee were on board Apollo 1 for a plugs-up test, a full-scale dress rehearsal for the actual launch. Suddenly it happened. There was a fire in the capsule. 3 men whose lives had been in our hands were lost.
Surely the opening vistas of space promise high costs and hardships, as well as high reward. But this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them.
After Apollo 1, some thought we'd failed, and that the moon was out of our reach. But we owed it to those men to learn from their sacrifice and to carry on. We started taking the Apollo vehicle apart, piece by piece. Was the design flawed? Had safety been compromised? Tough questions. And we spent 1.5 years redesigning the spacecraft so that no astronaut's life would ever be at risk because we overlooked something or because we could have done something better. A moon rocket is 91% high explosive, and it goes into the most unforgiving, hazardous environment there is. We could never make it risk-free, and the men who flew them knew that. We didn't send men into space again until Apollo 7 orbited the Earth testing some of the new designs. When everything worked perfectly, the decision was made. The next mission would travel to the moon. It was mankind's destiny to leave the shores of our planet behind and strike out across the vast ocean of space. In the great span of our history, now is the time that we could. Now is the time that we would. We stood on the eve of the longest, most dangerous journey that any man had ever undertaken. And it would be taken by Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders, the crew of Apollo 8. Through those doors, you'll find the firing room, launch control, just as it was on December 21st, 1968. This is the firing room, launch control for the Apollo missions. This is not a mock-up. These are the very consoles we sat at when men first took off to fly to the moon. The tragedy of Apollo 1 had put us 1.5 years behind. We were making up for it in one big leap, and we were doing it with a rocket that no man had ever flown before. It was a few days before Christmas 1968 when Apollo 8 sat on the pad. She was the first of a new kind, a moon rocket. This was the Phoenix, risen from the ashes of Apollo 1. The first Apollo crew did not die in vain. This was to be their testament. "36 stories high, she had been fully fueled throughout the night. The liquid oxygen in her tanks caused ice to form on the outside of the craft. The extreme temperature differences between the air and the sub-zero fuel caused the metal skin of the rocket to expand and contract. Everyone who was on the pad agreed. It was as though the rocket was alive, breathing, straining at the leash. Earlier in the morning, astronauts Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders had made their final preparations before taking that long ride out to the waiting spacecraft. The minimum safe distance from a Saturn V at liftoff was 3 miles. The reason was simple. When fully fueled, the rocket contained the explosive power of an atomic bomb. As the clock counted down, the astronauts, and all of us in launch control, went through the pre-flight checks, our hands on the controls of the most powerful, most complex machine ever built. It had over 2 million separate systems, and to bring these men back alive, everything had to
system had been tested. But what we didn't know was how they would perform when all 2 million began to work together. That moment would come when the countdown clock reached 0. If a maneuvering thruster failed, if communications broke down, if navigation was off by 1 degree, if any piece of the miles of wiring, circuits, relays, or valves was defective, Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders would pay with their lives. As they sat, waiting for launch on that chill December morning, these 3 astronauts were back to what they had always been, test pilots. You are now in the final minutes before the launch of Apollo 8, right here where it actually happened. Mankind is about to leave his planet behind and journey to another. It is one of those rare moments when history is not being made, destiny is being embraced.
T-minus 3 minutes and counting. We've completed our communications checks with the Apollo 8 astronauts in the cabin, and the communications are go. During this period, once we do get the firing command, the various tanks within the 3 stages of the Saturn V launch vehicle begin to pressurize. We have firing command. The firing command is in. We are now on the automatic sequence. T-minus 2 minutes, 20 seconds, and counting. Our status board indicates that all aspects are ready. Instrument unit is ready. Spacecraft ready. Final check of the emergency detection system. That ready light also on. First stage preparations are completed.
All systems are A-OK.
Keep going. We're on. Ready to go to concrete. Stand by, Walter. Okay, you're on.
All systems go.
1 minute 45 seconds and counting. The first stage liquid oxygen tank has been pressurized, and the pressure is still building up. Coming up in 90 seconds, mark, T-minus 90 seconds and counting. The Apollo 8 crew standing by, spacecraft commander Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, Bill Anders. We now have a report that the liquid hydrogen tank on the 3rd stage is pressurized. 1 minute 15 seconds. All 3rd stage propellants pressurized at this time as we come up on the 60-second mark on the flight to the moon. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. The vehicle now is completely pressurized. We're coming up on a power transfer shortly. We have the power transfer. We're now on the flight batteries within the launch vehicle. Final reports coming from Frank Borman at this time. Final look at the switch list aboard the spacecraft. 20 seconds, all aspects. We are still go at this time. T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. The ignition sequence stop. The engines are on. 4, 3.
successfully orbited the moon, and the astronauts returned safely to the Earth. I know. I'm Jim Lovell, and I was one of the crew of this spacecraft, Apollo 8. We were the first men to see the surface of the moon from just a few miles away. But it was the hundreds of thousands of men and women who worked in that team, and the millions of people who supported the mission that really made it possible. That way, I guess, we all went to the moon. Now, on the other side of those doors, you'll find an actual Saturn V moon rocket. It's still the most powerful, the most complex machine ever built. And I guess it's the only one that can take you to another planet. I actually got to fly one on a second flight to the moon called Apollo 13. But that's another story.
So we decided to take the bus tour because there was only a few left before they ended at 2:30 on the day we were visiting. So we got to this kind of center, and there was a little touch and go because we didn't know what to do, but we had to wait for some doors to open before like a pre-show, and then we sat down and watched kind of like the launch of the first, I guess, successful mission to get to the moon, not necessarily land on it. That's another story. You'll see. It was actually very interesting and really cool. And then now we're into the actual center where they have some actual rockets and other things to view. So let's go check that out. The first thing you see is the Saturn V rocket. It is absolutely ginormous. You can't miss it. And each section is kind of separated so that you can see all the different sections as you walk down the length of the center. And then there's also like a tiny little kind of scale model on the side as well. So it's pretty impressive, and it's like you're welcome to the center, if you will. So one of the first mini exhibits we came upon was the Path to the Moon. This is to celebrate the accomplishments of Apollo missions 7 through 10 and the technology that kept the astronauts safe while traveling to the moon. It was really cool because it was a full-size capsule that you could actually walk up and look on the inside to see what these astronauts kind of had to go through and the confined space they had to deal with while they were, on their mission. Next, I went to check out the Fisher Space Pen, where you can learn about the history of the iconic astronaut space pen that has flown on every single crewed mission since Apollo 7. The pen can write upside down, underwater, and in extreme temperatures. You can experience the wonder of the Apollo moon landings through various interactive exhibits and artifacts. You can see a real lunar module and touch an actual moon rock. The LM cockpit, LM interior, the lunar module LM cockpit housed all controls necessary to maneuver the vehicle during descent, ascent, and docking. The commander station was on the left, the LM pilots on the right. All critical instruments were either duplicated or at two positions, or were accessible to both astronauts. These astronauts stand next to the real Lunar Module 9 in this life-size scene from the Apollo 11 moon landing. Did you know in the Armstrong famous quote, there's a word missing from the live broadcast? The quote was actually, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." So the Astrovan took fully suited Apollo astronauts approximately 9 miles from the manned spacecraft operations building to the launch pad for their mission. A total of 19 missions used this Astrovan, beginning with Apollo 7. It was also used for the Skylab missions and the first 5 space shuttle missions. The Astrovan was a modified Clark Cortez motorhome and spacious enough to fit the astronauts and their bulky suits. This is the Lunar Rover Vehicle Trainer at the Kennedy Space Center. So this is the actual lunar rover that was used. They also said that there was some assembly required because it was the size of a dishwasher and had to be put together to become the actual rover used. This is a mobile equipment transporter. And here we have a space suit. Next, we found our way into the Apollo Treasures Gallery, where you can view an actual Apollo spacecraft and legendary artifacts in a display so immersive you can actually see the moon dust on Alan Shepard's spacesuit. The Apollo program's A7L spacesuit was one of the few pieces of equipment that flew the entire mission and had to work from launch to landing. The suit had to interface with the command module seating, navigation and optics, and launch support system. It also had to interface with the lunar module environmental control system and instrumentation system for landing and navigation. Lastly, the suit had to be able to work with the portable life support system and then all the way back to Earth. After taking a gander at some of the other displays, there was an announcement that was made that the station was closing, so we had to make our way towards the exit, which of course was through the gift shop. If you're in the market for anything NASA or space themed, these gift shops definitely have what you're looking for. You can find a wide variety of collectibles at the Space Center, and don't worry, we will be back because I left a few things behind. As we shut down the gift shop, we caught the shuttle back to the main center just in time to catch something spectacular. So we're on our way out to the viewing area to watch an actual rocket launch today. So we're gonna go see what the viewing area looks like and see if we can get a good spot. Once in the viewing area, we found a seat in the tight quarter bleachers and just kind of waited along with everybody else for the countdown to get closer to liftoff. We did find out that this is a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket that was launching from Cape Canaveral. It was going to carry 24 of the Starlink internet satellites. It did lift off from Cape Canaveral, that was roughly over 8 miles away from us, at 5:06 p.m.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
There it goes, right there. There it is, over there.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, that's impressive. That's a sonic boom.
After the amazing rocket launch, we had to stop into the world's largest space shop for one more look around. Of course, after that, it was time to go, for the center was closed for the day. Well guys, that's going to do it for us here at the Space Center. We had a really good time. We didn't get to do everything, so we'll definitely have to make another visit back. As always, thank you for following along on these little adventures of mine, and as always, I am Mike the Bee. You never know where I'm going to be, I'm just going to be. You be too. I'll see you guys later. Bye!